Topics from an African American perspective. This is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Hamlee. Just want to say very quick congratulations again to the 11 women who were named Women of Distinction by the YWCA of Southampton Roads. I had the honor and pleasure of emceeing that event yesterday, as well as serving as the event chairwoman, and it was a glorious time in downtown Norfolk. So congratulations again to the 2016 edition of our Women of Distinction. I received that honor in 2010, so it's a great honor. A common criticism of President Barack Obama in the black community is that he, quote, hasn't done enough to improve the black community, meaning not enough to fix chronic unemployment, low education, high incarceration, and poverty. There's an expectation of black politicians to fix the problems of the black community. But is it a fair expectation? Does holding office as an African-American politician automatically mean that you can fix what ails the community, particularly when it comes to economics? We're talking about this topic as part of a special program we call the Claville Report, Policy, Law, and Politics, and it's the brainchild of Assistant Professor and Director of the Hampton University Pre-Law Institute and my co-host today, Dr. Eric Claville. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Barbara.
Good to have you back.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Along with Ms. Allison Jones, Assistant Vice President for Virginia Governmental Relations with McGuire Woods Consulting. Allison, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Great. Thanks so much for joining us today. We appreciate that. So, Eric, I'm going to, even though you're co-hosting with me, I want you to answer that question. Is that a fair expectation of the black community that just because someone is African American and they become an elected official that they can just fix what's wrong with us? With the community?
Sure. I believe that it is a fair expectation, but it also boils down to what the local issues are in that particular community. So let's look at the local areas that we have now. Most individuals who are elected to office who are African American, for the most part, their electoral base is in an African American community. With your base, in politics, you always take care of your base first. That is the cardinal rule. Take care of them first. And if you do that, then they'll constantly put you into office. We've seen many examples, for example, with Eric Cantor, who was in the U.S. House of Congress, should have been the next Speaker of the House. He forgot about his base. So his base forgot about him on Election Day. So he's no more U.S. Congressman. So with that being the case, there is an expectation of creating opportunities and reversing the economic downturn in those communities. However, we see a lot of times that doesn't happen. Again, with President Obama, his faithful base of supporters, for the most part, and faithful Democratic supporters are African Americans. That's been proven by the numbers. However, if we look at substantive public policy, more specifically economic policy, you don't see any of that came out of his administration.
But Allison, okay, let's take the president for an example right now. If his base was the African American community, but he is president of the entire country. Mm-hmm. You know, his thing was, if I make a boat rise, all the boats rise. Agree? Disagree?
I agree. He has done a lot of things that I think that the public doesn't know about, and that's through no fault of his. It's just how press likes negative stuff, right? So we hear the more stories.
Except on Another View.
Except on Another View. Except on Another View, of course.
It's all positive.
Just kidding.
It's the bad stories, the fights in Congress that we always hear about, and not the policies that he has put in place that benefit all people, not just African Americans.
Mm-hmm. But then, you hear African Americans become very specific and pointed because, well, they say, for example, he supported laws that supported gay marriage, as an example. The black community looks at that as a specific thing for the LGBT community. And they say, Eric, that we can't point to a specific thing for the black community. Is that fair?
It is. And I have to disagree with my colleague Allison that if you do something for everything, all the boats rise. That's the same mentality with trickle-down economics, okay? It doesn't work. If you give me the opportunity, if I'm wealthy, to make more money, I'm not going to trickle it down to people that are poor. I'm going to keep it for myself and make myself wealthier. Okay, I'm going to be the same as the rich man that built more stables, to house his stuff. That's just the mentality of people when they're wealthy that don't have a good heart. in politics, you can go to public policy. You can see where policy is created in order to pay those individuals who help to get you into office. I tell everyone all the time, I say, listen, why would he raise over $750 million to run for president that pays $400,000 a year? Okay? Mm-hmm. You're going to pay that back. You're going to pay that back because there's some policy that we want you to push through, either through executive order or you're going to work through Congress, okay? It's the same thing on the local level. On the local level, city council persons who are not full-time, they make about $17,000 a year, okay, or $15,000. State representatives here in a General Assembly make $17,000 to $18,000 if you're a delegate or a senator. However, there are some races you're going to have to raise close $100,000, $500,000, over $1 million.
In the way you're in the state, yeah.
Exactly. So with that, there's policy that those individuals that give you or create those fundraisers for you to have $100,000, trust me, it doesn't come without any strings attached. That's all. That's what politics is.
So, Allison, then does that mean that using Eric's analogy here, my dear co-host, that using that analogy, then does that mean that primarily the black community will never gain any type of economic parity simply because by the numbers we're poorer than everyone else?
Well, I mean, I respectfully disagree with my colleague.
I like this.
See, we're so polite. I truly believe that most officials, whether it's local, state, or federal level, they really do begin and start off their careers with the good things in mind. You know, they really believe in making a difference for their communities.
They start
that way. I really believe that because they really are genuinely good people, and I know a majority of them for local, state, and federal levels. It's just when you get in there, you know, it's not what you thought it was going to be.
So it's the system.
It's the system, yeah.
But again, if you remove the money out of the system, see, I grew up, I believe in grassroots. I believe in grassroots organizing. I believe in one man, one vote. I still believe in that. I believe that if you engage that individual voter, okay, then they have the ability to make the crucial change. More specifically, they have the ability to change the person in office that's not doing what they're asked to do. Okay, and it's also about informing them.
Okay, so if it's about money and as opposed to being about race, then does it matter who's in office?
Well, no, I don't think it's about. It is about money, and race does play a part. Okay.
Because you got to have the money to win the race.
No, we're speaking of
speaking about racial makeup.
Yeah, it definitely does play a part in. With who gets the money. Again, if we look at the amount of contracts to corporations, small businesses, and so forth, even in the state, okay, what we call SWAM, or SWAM. Small women and minority-owned businesses, okay. The definition of a small or minority-owned business is 250 employees or $10 million in revenue, okay. That's not a small business.
Right.
But that gives an opportunity for individuals who are large in order to compete for those additional contracts. But with all of the billions of dollars of contracts passed down through the state and awarded, less than 5% of that went to individuals who are of color. So therefore, it went to individuals who are white males, and that's where the dominant opportunity in order to get wealth comes from. If you're a white male you're locked into the system, you're able to give these donations and the like. Again, though.
Well, Eric, okay, wait, back up just a second because I'm going to make sure we're clear on the meaning of SWAM, first of all, and also that we're understanding your point. So small, minority, and women-owned businesses. Yes. So where does the white male play into that? In other words, is it the small part, meaning small business, and because the rule is 250 employees or $2 million?
Exactly.
I see.
And also, if you have a company where you have a husband and wife, and it's a white couple, then if the woman is
the majority owner,
then you also get a chance to
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. We're talking about the intersection of economics and politics and the role that race plays in all of this in terms of our upcoming elections that we have on the national regional as well as local level. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Allison, as a student of Virginia politics, are you surprised at the number of African Americans running for mayor this time around?
I'm not. And I am really happy to see that number across the country running for mayor. I had a friend, Nick Mosby in Baltimore, that was running for mayor. Unfortunately, he had to drop out because the numbers just weren't there. But I was really happy to see a young African-American male step up and run, and I just love it. Asia in Compton, California is the mayor. She's a young African-American female. So it's good to see that because we can do it. We can do it.
Do you think that once they get into office, it makes a difference for the black community?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Your role model, you have young African Americans seeing, oh my gosh, I can be a mayor too. Especially when you're coming out of a ward that they grew up in. I really believe children, when they see people, make it to that level, it sends a strong message, and they can be encouraged. Mm-hmm. You can do it too.
Does the message get diluted, Eric, if people say, they're just the mayor for all people, and therefore they should not pay so much attention to a particular community?
Exactly. It does get diluted because, again, when you look at government is about giving contracts and making wealth. Okay. When you hear the argument, oh, we want smaller government. Yeah, they want smaller government not to intrude upon their business in contracting with government, but it's really not about what the idealistic views of smaller government, the argument of Thomas Jefferson and so forth. What it is, again, it's about looking at giving opportunities to create business opportunities within the local area and on the state and federal level. Let's take Newport News, for example. That's where I live. Mm-hmm. Newport News recommended city budget is close to $500 million, okay? $475 million. If you add in the federal dollars and the like, it's $478 million. Of that, you have line items where they delegate for construction, they delegate for legislative, of consulting, and so forth. If you look at the firms that are receiving those contracts, okay, it boils down to only a handful. And those are the people who have the relationships, individuals who are there with that contract consistently with the city. And I'm just using Newport News for an example, but if you look at Norfolk, it's the same way. If you look at the city of Hampton, it's the same way. You look at the city of Richmond, it's the same way.
So if you bring in someone new, then, and especially if it's not one of the, if it's not the same person that has been in office for a long time, but a brand new person, then does that not then allow the opportunity for more business to come in, maybe, Allison?
Well,
or different people to be selected for those
I think there will be different people, but I also believe there will also be those same people, because if you're used to giving and you're used to receiving the contracts, you better be doggone straight that they're going to support the candidate that wins as well. And eventually after they win, they're going to give those campaign contributions even after they've won the election. There's always usually debt after a campaign. But I don't want, I still think we still believe that there are people that are going to do good once they get in office. I still believe that, Eric. I disagree with you.
440-2665.
They can do both.
Or 1-800-940-2240. Matt joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Matt. You're on the air.
Hi there.
Hi.
If, as your guest suggests, that money in politics is the root of much difficulty, and I agree completely, then I wonder, why is it that when a candidate like Bernie Sanders comes along, who puts a lie to the assertion that the only way to succeed in politics is by raising money from large donors, why does he get so little? And by the way, he's calling for things that help the most economically disadvantaged, $15 minimum wage, health care for everyone. When such a candidate comes along, why does he get such little support in the black community?
Okay, let's get an answer from our guests, and thanks so much for the call, Matt. We appreciate it. Eric, you want to take that one on?
Sure. First of all, that was thank you for your question. I teach on the undergraduate level. I teach constitutional law, public policy, and history, and the majority of my students are supporting Bernie Sanders. Okay, we see where this particular voting age, the millennials, and individuals who are 35 and under are leaning toward Bernie Sanders because he speaks to those issues which affect their everyday lives. However, you see where Hillary Clinton, again, using the Democrats as an example based on the caller, you see where 36 and up are traditional voters of the Democratic Party and how that particular candidate continues to speak to those issues in which they voted on. And it's also being familiar with the Clintons. And keep in mind, the Clinton machine is and was one of the most powerful political machines for the last 4 decades, okay, within the Democratic Party and within the South. They've built a lot of relationships with African-American communities, African-American churches, and the like. So when you have a relationship with someone, it's very easy to give them a pass when something happens, meaning that, okay, you made a mistake here and there. It's just like a relationship with a friend. If your friend messes up once or even twice, it's easier to give them a pass as opposed to someone you don't have a relationship with. So there is support for Bernie Sanders in the African-American community, but it's within that demographic.
Allison?
I would agree. And I would also add that most of our loyal party folks are with the, I would say, incumbent or the known person. And most of our Bernie Sanders supporters are not party people. They aren't the establishment party folks. And like you said, they're under the age, and he speaks to what they're free college education for all. Who wouldn't want that?
Right.
Sign me up, but I'm not at college age anymore.
Right.
Won't have those pass loans.
Won't have those, yeah, right.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Aaron joins us from St. Charles. Hi, Aaron.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Thank you for calling.
How are you?
Thanks for calling from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you for having me.
What's your question?
Well, you were talking about the rising tide lifts all boats, and if that's really true, if it really helps people. And I was thinking about Obamacare and how much of a difference it's made in decreasing the amount of uninsured, obviously, but it's also closed the gap, not completely, but it has closed the gap. Sorry, loud car. It has closed the gap between the rates of uninsured for African Americans and people of color and white Americans. So isn't that an example of how a rising tide is lifting all boats?
Okay, great. Thanks for the call, Aaron. We'll let our guests answer. Allison, why don't you take that one on first?
Absolutely, Aaron. And that is one of the great things Obama did do was to pass that. And, the greatest thing was being able to keep your children on your insurance. I know I wish I had that when I was going to college. But that is one of the good things that Obama has done. Thank you for bringing that up, Aaron. What do you have to say, Dr. Claville?
That is the example that the Obama administration also gives. However, I do disagree that that is a major part of uplifting the African-American community. And why do I say that? Because primarily the Affordable Health Care Act, known as the popular name of Obamacare, was actually created for individuals, non-blacks, so mostly white Americans, that were finding themselves unemployed, finding themselves without health care, and so forth. African Americans, for the most part, you were either on Medicare, Medicaid, or going to the free hospital, free clinic. Okay, none of that has changed. The only thing that's changed is that now you simply sign up for insurance, but you're going back to the same place that you were going to before. So when you're talking about the numbers, okay, yes, I now have an insurance card where before I had a free card. Okay, I'm still getting the same service that I was getting before.
Well, okay, I might agree with you a little bit from the lower socioeconomic group within the African American community, but the middle class had insurance. I mean, don't you think that was a help to the black middle class?
Again, the middle class already had insurance, so we didn't need a Affordable Health Care Act. I mean, I don't need a Affordable Health Care Act, thank goodness. Okay, my friends don't need it, thank goodness, because we already have health insurance. There's not a problem there. Okay, again.
Except for the unemployed middle class that went through the same recession that everybody else went through.
First of all, and think about it.
He's just not going
I can't believe I'm arguing with Eric.
I know.
But again, First of all, I don't believe there is a middle class anymore.
Okay.
I believe you either get a check or you don't. So we're all like a few checks away from being poor. But at the same time, that group of individuals is by the numbers are very, very small. Okay, so it's good to have health insurance. You don't really go to the doctor that much unless when you get up in age or for annual checkups, things of that nature. But the big bulk of public policy that uplifts an individual community is the ability to receive contracts through the local and federal government in order to obtain wealth, period.
So if someone, because I'm really struggling with this a little bit.
I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you in just a minute.
If someone is starting a business, then Eric, your premise is that it's not through private industry or private people coming to their business to buy their goods, but it's through government contracts that they're able to make the most money. Am I hearing you correctly?
Not only that, but I'll give you several examples.
Okay.
Go to the CEO of Boeing. Where do their major contracts come from? Okay. Let's go
come from the government. That's true.
Go to the CEO of Huntington Ingalls. Ask them where their major contracts come from.
Okay.
Department of Defense, government. Now I can go on and on, but I think we have the point. If you go to these major corporations, again, big government, again, it's just a little.
But
push.
even on the local level, you still think that that's it, as opposed to the what do you call it? Just economic trade in general.
Sure. Well, even on the local level, but it depends on what type of business you're in as well. So if you're in construction, yes, all right, that deals with the state and local government. Okay. If you're in consulting, that still deals a lot with the federal and local level. So again, whatever services are there, even now, if you look at certain professions like legal professions, that is a more of a private bartering for goods and services. Individuals who are out in the community, they come to your services and so forth. However, the Attorney General's office still contracts a lot of their cases out for individuals to do business.
You want to add to that, Allison?
And also on a local level, there are also other services that are contracted out legally. When your in-house counsel cannot handle it and you need another opinion. But I do want to go back to, at what point, though, if we're starting a business, you have to do some education on your own, right? So why, I'm not going to just give everybody a pass. If you want to do business with the government, you need to do your homework on how to do business with the government. There are a lot of programs out there that you can learn. A lot of it's online, and it's about building a network of people. Partner with a majority company. Get in there. Getting a part of that contract is better than just sitting on the sideline complaining, right? So, I just think that at some point in time, we really have to just go in there and get it, and I think that's what we need to hold our African-American officials accountable for, is making sure there is enough for everybody. You might not get 100% of the contract, but holding them accountable. What is, at the end of the day, how much business that the city or state or federal did, how much of that was for a minority contractor? Came back to yes.
Actually,
yes.
I think you agree with me. Again, holding your.
If we're talking about contracts, that way, yeah.
People to the fire.
Fire.
If you're just joining us, we're talking about the intersection of economics and politics and its impact on local, state, and federal government with Dr. Eric Claville of Hampton University and Allison Jones with McGuire Woods Consulting. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. And you guys must have struck a chord because our lines are lit up. So if you get a busy signal, keep calling us. Steve joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Steve. You're on the air.
Doing today?
Oh, we're doing great.
Hi,
how are you?
Great.
Good.
Well, I study economics. I'm a systems thinker. I develop mechanisms that interact with society. And so looking at the situation of economics, it's the velocity of money doesn't stay down where we are. A billionaire, when he makes his money off of dividends, mostly dividends of ownership of stocks, it's just not military. It's ownership of companies like Apple and all these other companies. They only spend 3 to 5% of their income. When a poor person, a person that's middle class, like us, we spend 100 to 150% of our money. So the economics is that the money, the velocity of money has to stay lower down. Now, 70% of the GDP is purchasing power. What most of these corporations do, they go to the lobbyists, they give them the bills, they write the bills, and they go to both parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, and they say, if you pass this bill, I know your wife is a smart person. She can have a job here at our place for $100,000 or $500,000. This is what they do. That's how they buy their laws. And so what we have to do, we have to group together. This is not a black or white thing. This is a divide and conquer thing that people want to make it a white or black thing. We have to be educated. So there are systems and mechanisms out there that can be used, and I suggest CESJ.org, Center for Economic and Social Justice. It's a very good site to see outside the box how we can increase our capital ownership. We have to start owning the capital production in this world.
Thank you, Steve, so much for your call. We'll let our guests respond to you. Go ahead, Allison. I'll let you start.
Well, I certainly appreciate Steve's comments, and I will check out their website. And he is correct. I mean, at the end, for the most part, I'll just say that I'm a lobbyist. And in the legislature, you either we're playing defense or offense for our clients. And I can say that everything's not about somebody's spouse that's having a job. It's really about what's in the best interest of our client. And I'll just leave it at that.
Eric?
I agree with the caller 100%. His data is correct. And it's about holding your.
But that just makes me so sad. You guys. I mean, really, we're just talking about. Maybe I'm just being super naive here, but everything is about buying the vote. I mean, or buying. Yeah, basically buying the vote.
It's influence.
Yes.
It's influence.
Yes.
And those who have the influence change the game,
right.
And you're able to play the game.
Okay, so until we can get in there to change the influence, then. It sounds pretty bleak in terms of what we can do as a community.
Well, actually, I have the plan right now.
Okay, what's the plan, Eric?
The plan right now is, again, what the voters in Richmond did with Eric Cantor. You forgot about us, we forgot about you. He's no more U.S. Congressman. Vote, hold your elected officials accountable, vote them in, and then vote them out, or continue to vote them in if you see improvements in your community. But it's about education. So
it is, yeah.
Educating the voter base about what actually will help to uplift their community, okay, and what will help them individually, economically, in their schools and so forth.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Marvin joins us from Richmond. Hi, Marvin. You're on the air.
Hey, how you doing today?
Doing great.
Hi, Marvin.
That's good. How are y'all?
Pretty good.
I just wanted to make a couple of comments on what was said earlier when the statement was made about black politicians doing more for the black community,
sure,
and things like that. And we all know that just because you're black don't mean you will do for your own people, because some people are just greedy and they're out for themselves. But my biggest point was this right here. I feel like if we can get the lawyers and the judges, a lot of them out of office, and go back to when you had regular people in office, put in school teachers, put in blue-collar workers, put in, maybe a couple of lawyers or whatever. Right now, the field is full of what I call law liars. Because these people play with words so much, it's ridiculous, and it's hard to follow them if you don't watch what they do, because that's the only way you know what they're saying. They have said one thing, but we as people don't watch what they do. And I was taught, people can tell you anything, but their action.
Oh, I think we may have lost him. But his point being, you two lawyers.
Well, I'm not a lawyer. By profession, I'm not a lawyer. I have to say, I'm not a lawyer.
I did find that amusing.
Yeah.
But his point being, we need to elect real people, quote unquote, as he's saying, and not professional politicians.
Well, we got to have them
to.
I'm sorry.
No,
but
go ahead.
We have to have those real people step up and run, right? If you want to see a teacher, you put a teacher out there to run. we have to have those type of candidates. But you also need to remember, not all of these jobs will allow you to hold public office. So unless you are wealthy or own your own company that gives you the flexibility to serve office, you're not going to do it. Sure. For $15,000, $16,000, you're just not going to do it. So until we, and I'm a big fan of this, until we pay our local, state elected officials, a livable salary, they're not. Your average person is not going to run.
And also that's by design, to keep those individuals out of office, those regular individuals. I agree with the caller in part. If you look at the Constitutional Convention, over half of those individuals that signed the Constitution were attorneys. Okay, so there is a level of education that an individual should have going into politics. But at the same time, we do need the average person, the blue-collar worker, influencing what policy is out there. And again, I'm going back to grassroots. It's all about having your elected official educate you educate them, and then holding them accountable.
Okay. Dave joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Dave. You're on the air.
Hey, Barbara, you got another lawyer on the phone.
Yay!
All right. I wanted to ask Dr. Claville a question because it seems like he is putting out the position that President Obama has not done enough for the African-American community while he's been in office. Sure. So I wanted to lay out a theoretical. He's President of the United States right now. He's got Democratic control of both houses of Congress. What would he specifically like to see the president put into place in terms of programs that are going to help the African-American community?
Sure.
Okay.
At this particular time, there is no Democratic or control of.
He's asking you.
Oh, if it was.
If were you,
okay,
what would you want? Yeah.
Sure. Well, first thing
what do you want him to do?
Right. First thing I would like to see is an ability to create economic zones in urban areas. There was an example of one that was going to open up in Detroit about 2 decades ago. There was an example of one in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Both mayors shot those ideas down. That was to bring businesses to those areas, mixed-use living areas to those areas, and so forth. Is what you call, it's called hub zones now, but the ability for individuals to receive government loans at a low interest rate. Also, I would love to see a duplication of the policies and the public policy that allow individuals from certain countries to receive no interest loans based upon our relationship with those countries for African Americans who are opening up businesses in disadvantaged areas, okay, in those various areas. In addition to that, there's a lot of public policy that used to restrict African Americans from receiving wealth, such as redlining. There are many legal cases about that. I'm pretty sure you know. In addition to that, a lot of persons don't realize that African Americans could not have bought life insurance for a long time. Okay, burial policy, but not life insurance. So the ability to reverse those public policies that stymied the African American community from receiving upward, a hand up, not a handout. Keep in mind, listeners, I'm advocating a hand up, not a handout, such as everyone else, so that we too can continue to contribute to this great country of ours, of America, and live the American dream.
Okay, let's go to Mark in Norfolk. Hi, Mark, you on the air.
Hello.
Hi.
One question. My wife, she's a teacher in Norfolk Public School System, and wouldn't starting from like the elementary education level eventually help any disenfranchised community, not just the black community, Hispanic, whites, because what it seems like, at least from her end and what I've seen, like the people coming from these poor neighborhoods, they have a hard time, like even just being in like a normal school environment because you're just surrounded by the people that live in the same neighborhood as you. It's almost as if in Norfolk at least, they put most of the poor African Americans in one school rather than letting them see what else is out there, or just making being a teacher more incentivized rather than having them always have a high attrition rate each year. And but I think education is really the key to fixing any sort of community, really, because people are uneducated, they're more likely to commit crimes or anything like that, white, black, Hispanic, no matter what. And the public education system in Norfolk and America in general is really flawed, teaching to a test.
Okay. Mark, let's let the panelists answer your question, and we get where you're going. Mark is saying that when we both have talked about the whole education of so that people understand what's going on. Allison?
I certainly agree with Mark. My parents are both retired educators from Richmond Public Schools, and they taught in those local lower economic school districts. And so what they did to try to combat what they saw every day, you know, a kid just like me, oh, how are we going to get out? They always brought in people from the community that, you know, might have come for their community or that made it and, you know, tried to mentor them and show them a pathway out. You know, you can do this, look at me. It's about showing those examples, and that's where, you know, folks like Eric and I, we can certainly give back, and I do. You know, we have got to show our young people an example and stay in the schools, because until we have mixed-use developments in higher, lower-income communities, we're going to have the same thing, and we repeat the cycles of poverty.
Eric? Yeah, I'm a huge advocate of the magnet school system. My brother and I grew up in the magnet school system. It exposes kids to a lot of things that they normally would not have been exposed to. It brings the best and brightest together. But for the long term, I think that those opportunities should exist. It really should. But again, let's go back to the state legislature and the General Assembly that approve these SOLs, that approve how public school education is administered. However, those same regulations and policies do not affect private or parochial schools.
But here's the question, because I wonder, just in general, the whole idea of civics and people truly understanding how our political process works. And it's not just poor kids in inner city schools who don't understand it. There are a lot of, you know, middle and upper middle class people who don't understand it either. And I just wonder, what do you think we need to do to make people more engaged? This year, everybody's engaged because there's all drama going on in the presidential election. And so a lot of people
That's a nice way of putting it.
A lot of people are very engaged, you know, but the thing is, all politics are local. I mean, and until we start caring about it here on the local level, we're going to, I think, continue to have the drama we're having nationally. Don't you think, Allison?
Yeah, I agree with you, Barbara. And it is all of this goes back to education. And at the end of the day, your local elected officials have the most impact on your local communities. You know, what Obama does in the White House is great, but at the end of the day, it's your school board member, it's your school council, it's your mayor that impacts your greater community where you live. So we've got it.
I want to try to get two calls in before we run out of time. Mark joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Mark. You're on the air. There's a lot of Marks today.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, good afternoon. I just want to paint a very vivid picture so it doesn't get lost. Okay, I'm a general contractor. A friend of mine was a plumber. We go to Virginia State University, which is an HBCU, to look at a contract job. Okay, it's SWAM certified. You go in the room, you've got about 30 contractors for maybe like a $7,000 or $8,000 job. Okay, and the majority of those contractors are white males. Okay, so what's going on is you've got people who are supposed to have these special certifications, and which they do. They probably have, you know, their wives or whatever, competing for the small stuff. So by the time you try to turn to kind of like race and bid to the bottom, you're never going to have the capacity to grow out of that. So that's one point. The second point to the madam attorney is where I have to kind of push back against you is that, yes, it's good if you can go in and get 5%. But what's happening is you got this Bernie Sanders effect. You have minority contractors who've gone in and got the 3%, gotten the 5%. But the problem is they'll never be able to work their way or catch up to the race to be able to have the bonding capacity, the qualifications to really to get maybe to build a stadium at Old Dominion University. So the SB ballots and some of the bigger boys are going to always be at the table, and they're going to be like football fields ahead of the competition. So the question becomes is, I hear education, but this is also an economic problem in how we spend our dollars and how we're committed to each other to be able to create these opportunities for ourselves.
Okay. Mark, thanks for joining us. And I also want to make clear, Allison is a lobbyist. That was my fault. I called her an attorney. She is a lobbyist. But I'm going to let her respond. Go ahead, Allison.
I certainly understand what you're saying, Mark. I have friends that are fourth-generation African-American contractors out of Richmond, Virginia, Davis Brothers Construction. And I have watched them over the years build their bonding capacity. I'm not going to say how much they have now, but bonding is a major issue with African-American contractors and minority contractors.
Explain what that means.
What that is you have to have enough money or insurance, if you will, to cover your project.
Okay.
And so if you're going after the $100 million contract, you don't have the bonding capacity. You know, it's like $1 million. I think you have to have 1% or something. So how they made it happen, they partnered with majority contractors, and you have to do a good job, people. Like, that's the one thing that will just shut you out. If you have a bad reputation in the community, you don't finish your projects on time, you're overbidding, you're overscheduled, you're not coming in, you will not have that reputation. So I suggest, I've seen it happen here in Atlanta. You've got to work with majority contractors, develop those great programs. They have wonderful programs that look, most of the projects now, you have to have a minority piece to it. So why not be a part of it? And that's how you grow your company and your business. You partner with the majority companies.
Eric.
Look, I agree.
And you will have your football stadium.
Yeah, look, I understand the caller's frustration that he has. Okay,
yeah, absolutely.
Because that's exactly what you're going to see.
Mm-hmm.
The problem that you're going to have is getting in the door to partner with these larger contracting firms. Okay, because again, it's all about relationship building. It's all about who qualifies as a minority. Keep in mind, white women do qualify as a minority under the definition, the federal definition, state and local.
Okay, so and we've got like 5 minutes left, or a little less than that. So, but I want to get into a little bit about Allison. You're a proponent of partnering with these folks. Eric, you're saying it's tough to partner because we've got all these other things in the way. So, how do you get your foot in the door to make that happen?
You show up at these events. There are always events all over town, whether ribbon cuttings. So say Skanska, for example, has a ribbon cutting for a new building. They are bringing their top brass into town. You show up and meet with these people.
So don't wait till it's time to bid.
That's right. Don't wait till you have to be aggressive. I'm telling you, I wouldn't be where I am today if I were not the girl working, showing up at networking events.
Right.
Dinners.
So Allison, I mean, you're driving home the point that the caller made. Yes, you have to be aggressive, but we have to also admit that there's a segment of population that does not have to do what you have to do because it's being passed down to them. Here's a good guy. Let me introduce you.
And if you know that guy, Eric,
now,
look.
And again,
we're not bringing people with us. That's the issue.
Well,
we are not. Once an African American, to our fault, some of us are not bringing people with us, right?
Well, also,
but that's a whole nother radio conversation.
But look, also, by the time we get notice of the event, it's hard to call somebody to get off their other job to come with you. Okay.
All right. Let me see if we can get Vernon in from Newport News. Hi, Vernon. You're on the air.
Hi. How you doing?
Okay.
Hi, Vernon.
All right. Everybody's made some good points. I see it as economics too. I mean, we want our political rights, but we haven't finished with our economic rights, and I know we don't have much time. What do y'all think about community investment banks? And what I mean is there any kind of mechanism, any kind of organization where people in a local community, let's say in Newport News, could pool their money and start a community investment bank or community investment fund?
Okay.
I mean, is that regulated somehow, or is that possible?
Okay, Vernon, let me let them answer you because we've got about 2 minutes left in the segment. What do you think about that idea?
Right. I think that is a phenomenal idea. I think that communities, but not just African American communities and poor communities, but I think all communities are looking to go back to that model because, again, you see a lot of the merging of goods and services. Globalization has really affected a lot of what America can produce. So I think that's a great idea. But, again, in order to do that, you're going to need leaders being able to stand up and educate the public about these things, okay? So we need individuals who are vested in those communities that have made it and still live in those communities, okay? Or still frequent those communities, whether you go to church or go to your friends' homes, whatever the case may be, in order to do that. Because if you don't live there, if you don't see it, it doesn't impact you and you're not worried.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Allison?
Out of sight, out of mind.
Okay, we've got about 2 minutes left in the segment. So, Allison, to give us a final thought in terms of what we need to do about economics and politics.
Well, one, I would get behind a candidate that you could live with, right, and do everything you can to get them elected and support them along the way so you have their ear. The other thing, and I want to go back to what the caller, like I said, we have lost all of our blank banks in the Commonwealth. And I think that's another issue that we have regarding obtaining resources, because our majority banks are not always going to give us a loan. So I digress on that. But educate, go out, get out the vote, support your local candidates, and bring about change and hold them accountable.
That's Allison Jones from McGuire Woods Consulting. Thank you so much for joining us. Eric, you got 20 seconds. 20 seconds. I do that to you.
Well, I'm going to try to get it in. Mentioning what I believe that President Obama has done a phenomenal job being the first African American president in the United States. He had a hard job, and as African Americans, we understand that. But I do wish that there was more public policy created to help uplift and rejuvenate, revive African American communities. Grassroots, you can do it on a local level. Hold your elected officials accountable and make it happen.
Got to go. Thank you so much, Eric Claville with Hampton University for the Claville Report. We appreciate that, and we'll be right back.
I'm Gwen Eiffel of the PBS NewsHour and Washington Week, and you're listening to Another View on 89.5 WHRV FM.
My friend Gwen Eiffel, she and I work together in Baltimore. Absolutely. A local man has taken his love to draw and turned it into his dream job. Kevin Roberts illustrates comic books and spoke to our Lisa Godley about his passion for transforming his artwork into colorful characters you won't soon forget.
Since Kevin Roberts was old enough to hold a crayon, he's been drawing. So when this communication and arts design major got an opportunity to illustrate a comic book, he jumped at it. The result was the comic book series, Stronghold.
Stronghold, I guess the stump speech would be that 20 years ago, say the mid-90s, now we're talking alternate history, the Earth was invaded by aliens, and they won. So there's an occupying government, a galactic empire occupying the Earth, and as long as you are willing to cooperate with them and assimilate into their society, you can benefit from that. But there's a lot of people who do not want to assimilate and are trying their best to maintain their freedom and their sovereignty and are trying to mount an insurrection or a revolution against the occupying government of this galactic alien empire.
Roberts says the 5 main characters are the ones leading the revolution.
Depending on your perspective, they're either terrorists or they're freedom fighters, but they get special technology, special power that allows them to even the odds in the confrontation.
Roberts has been doing freelance comic book illustration since he graduated from Virginia Commonwealth University in 2007. He says he's always liked comics, and growing up, he would make comics in his sketchbook. But the very talented illustrator just wasn't happy with his work back then. Still, he kept drawing, and of course, as a child, he had his favorites.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can, spins a web any size.
Probably Spider-Man or the X-Men, as far back as I can remember. I was really into cartoons, though, so I was really into Ninja Turtles as well, but I didn't have any Ninja Turtles comics until I was probably 8 or 9, but I think I was definitely reading more Spider-Man and maybe some Batman.
Roberts says during his teenage years, he didn't follow comics at all, but when he got to college, that changed.
The Richmond comics community is pretty vibrant. A lot of my classmates were keeping up with them, and we have a really nice local comic book shop called Velocity Comics that is near campus. So after certain classes, we would hit up the comic book shop on Wednesdays because that's when the comic books come out.
He says it was his junior year at VCU when a couple of friends started knocking around the idea of creating their own comic book. He later teamed up with Brian Visaggio to create Stronghold. Visaggio writes and Roberts illustrates, but he says the key to their success is collaboration. Roberts' attention to detail in the characters he draws, coupled with the amazing colors he uses to accentuate their features, can't help but draw you in. So vibrant and powerful, they almost jump off the page at you.
When I design aliens, I try to just kind of mess with different animal species and combine them, but it's how their species looks is they have different shades of blue and green and purple skin, and the face ridges on their cheekbones and their eyebrows and stuff like that.
Roberts is the son of local news anchor Don Roberts, who he says has had some influence on his work.
Growing up, I was raised on just mainstream comics and cartoons, and most of your heroes are white. So I was just drawing what I saw, not thinking much about it. And he would say, "Where are all the characters that look like you?" I hadn't thought about it. He planted that seed, I guess, and eventually I started inserting myself into characters, and then I started, branching out and started actually thinking about it.
And what is Kevin Roberts' vision for Stronghold?
The dream is for it to become some kind of multimedia property. I would love for it to have a movie deal or maybe an animated feature or a series, but we're still fleshing out a lot of the book and the series. We know how it ends and what needs to happen, but we're still getting there.
While he waits, he continues to create. Kevin Roberts is currently working on the first edition of a new comic book, a more lighthearted sci-fi comedy he calls Ride. For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
And congratulations to Don's son, Kevin. Thanks for joining us today. There's a brand new way to listen to Another View on your smartphone or to listen to any of our podcasts. Go to your app store and download the brand new WHRO Media app. It has Another View and all of our local programming, plus any of the shows you see and hear on PBS and NPR. It's a very cool app. Plus, you can find us on Facebook, so like us, and I'm on Twitter at Barbara Ham Lee. Hope to see you this evening at St. James United Methodist Church in Hampton for their Gospel Fest. It's free and open to the public. I have the pleasure of serving as MC. Join us tonight at 6:30 for a wonderful time. And I'm honored to be the keynote speaker at tomorrow's Daniel's Tea event, held by the Daniel's Blessing Foundation. Candy Hayes and her group raise money to purchase toys for underserved children in Haiti and here in Hampton Roads. It's at the Town Point Club in downtown Norfolk. Call 757-404-6235 for more information. Next week on Another View, Roger, Carol, Bill, and Will join us for lively debate on politics and a deeper dive into the gun violence rocking our communities. It's the Another View Roundtable. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Victor Bowen is our audio engineer. And a special thank you to Marshall Aldoff, who answered our phones, and Benjamin Bailey, who ran our webcam today. They're both Hampton University graduating seniors who stepped in to help us out, and they will both graduate May 8th, so congratulations to them both. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Make it a fabulous weekend, everyone, and let's get together again next Friday at noon for Another View.